ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم أما بعد السلام عليكم. Again, it is a great honor, a great privilege, as always, to continue holding this space, man. No clear projections on when we can actually re-enter the space and share space physically. Might be 2022, might be sometime near the end of 2021, or wallahu ta'ala a'lam, could be sooner than either of those projections. But the fact that, some of us have been committed enough to this, now virtual space to continue tuning in week after week is really humbling. And I pray that we can continue, if we have, to make these, sessions something that, students look forward to. I know I certainly look forward to it, and something through which we learn, we get an opportunity to converse, share points of view, perspectives, are mutually enhanced, etc. Last week we ended talking about marriage, and mashallah, Allah, who mashallah recently did marry with the good brother, Eric Frank, asked a question about just, prophetic, I guess, glimpses of, what marriage is supposed to be like, how the Prophet, peace be upon him, engaged, domestically, etc. And we ended the class, I think, on a very high note, talking about, some of those instances. And then I saw, mashallah, Rana sent me a message that people wanted to talk about some of the difficulties, some of the impediments to getting married in our community. And I actually do have something to say about that. Our community is in a, effectively kind of a first effective settlement kind of context, in that what our community looks like now will probably be the demographics, at least numerically, going forward, will probably resemble what our community is now. However, a lot of the things that I think will become normal in our community going forward, and say maybe a generation or two, we're still very much connected to kind of like our parents' generation, cultural expectations. In some sense, we really don't have a marriage culture yet in the Muslim community broadly that reflects our unique and individual experience. People, because I think, for like, just in my experience, I expect, and I don't mean this in like maybe not categorically. I think, there are some kinds of preference in marriage, in companionship, that I think will certainly always be there, but kind of the strict ethnic boundaries that I think are, expectations of our parents in some cases. I don't expect those to be, I don't expect those boundaries to be policed as vigorously in, say, 20 or 30 years as they are now. And I only mention that to say, I think a lot of the difficulty we have in finding partners is because we are in between these different marriage cultures, in between a marriage culture in which, families play a tremendous role, and a marriage culture in which families play a minimal role, in between marriage cultures in which ethnicity, for instance, sometimes tribe, is very important, and a marriage culture where those things are less important. And then I think all of those kind of logistical factors or cultural factors, you see them being played out in kind of the logistical ways that we're actually encountering each other. So when I think about like a young Muslim seeking a suitable companion, it's like, where do you start? Do you use an application? Some kind of online application? Do you rely on friends, acquaintances? Do you rely on your parents? I think all of that is still producing a great degree of confusion in our community in terms of how we're going to manage all of that. And perhaps more important than that, I think we're also in between marriage cultures in terms of what we're looking for in a spouse. I think most of us now are looking for romantic partners that we can befriend. We're not thinking about someone that just checks the boxes. We're not thinking about somebody that's like, okay, he or she is a good Muslim, seems like their lifestyle is consistent or conducive to my own personalities, just given a few kind of preliminary face-to-face meetings. Personalities don't seem to clash, or even better, seem complementary. Yeah, this can get done. No, we're looking for a much deeper, um, um, much more personal connection than that in most cases, just because a lot of us, I mean, myself included, I'm not speaking from outside of these phenomena. Um, in a sense, I am, because I'm already married. I'll make sure that if anybody sees my wife, make sure to tell her that I said that. So in a sense, I'm speaking from outside of these phenomena because I'm already married. But in terms of what I was looking for, I certainly wasn't looking for anything that I guess was like, okay, compatibility test, check, 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 check. You're looking for someone with whom you share a deep um, connection, perhaps. And the question becomes, how does one test? How does one probe to see if one shares that with somebody while maintaining all of these religious boundaries in terms of sharing space, communication, etc. So I think all of these are factors that make it very difficult for people to get married in this time. And perhaps most fallaciously, we're living in a time in which, and this, I might get some pushback from some people, and that's okay. I'm ready for that. But we're living at in a time in which access to sexual intercourse perhaps has never been more casual, and I think that kind of culture around intimacy generally makes marriage less urgent for men and women, but for men in particular. Unfortunately, that kind of culture leaves very little incentive for certain kinds of men. Now, for that very religious man, of course, no matter how easy one can access intimacy or close companionship, marriage is something that he deems requisite in order to experience those things in a God pleasing way, or she deems requisite in order to experience those things in a God pleasing way. Marriage is something that just kind of like has to happen. Before people that are religious enough to believe, these are believing Muslims, but um, marriage is not kind of even a semi-exclusive route to experiencing that kind of companionship, physical and otherwise. Marriage becomes something that is, I don't know, it just isn't as urgent. And this is what I think in part accounts for why there's such a large number of women in our community seeking partners, and men that just aren't on their level in terms of level of seriousness, um, preparedness for marriage, interest in marriage, and that's also producing, I think, some lopsided, numbers. But I'd be interested in hearing from you guys. I see all of those phenomena because I'm out there. Before COVID, I used to travel, talk to young Muslims throughout the country in various communities, and these were some of the consistent things that I saw that made marriage difficult for young Muslims in our community. But what do you guys think? I mean, you can disagree with me if you want to. I mean, you'd be wrong if you did that. But of course, you're open to do that.
Sam, this is Dana. I think one of the other things, like in addition to everything you said, I think, I know it's halal for Muslim men to marry outside of the faith, and by contrast, it's not, or they say it's not for Muslim women to do the same. I think it's exacerbated this imbalance because a lot of great Muslim men are marrying outside of the faith, and then it just really exacerbates that imbalance, I think. And even the social stigma of that is also an imbalance. Even outside of the religious implications, people don't seem to mind if their sons are marrying Christian or Jewish women, but their girls can't speak to those people at all.
Yes. You know what, Don? I want to comment on that. Give me 1 second, Don. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Akil! Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Oh. Alaikum assalam.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me. Okay, 1 second. Wait, what happened here?
You might have unmuted your video. Muted it.
Yes, I'm trying to get back to my video. Oh, wait. Assalamu alaikum. Am I back on, Rhonda?
Yep, you're on.
Okay, bismillah. Put me back with the group, inshallah. Am I live or not yet?
Yeah, you're live. You're good. I can see you.
Okay, bismillah. So yeah, no, Donna, to your point, I think this is a serious problem, and this is one of the issues that you encounter when you don't have a communal sense of mission, and anything that has ever been deemed permissible becomes something that we encourage, and something that, if someone chooses to marry outside the faith, a man in this case, I don't think that the man should be censured or blamed or ridiculed or ostracized or singled out or any such mistreatment. But I think we need to start encouraging marriage within our community. I think it's very important, especially to, in fact, almost exclusively to, brothers. And, part of it, I think, is developing a culture that really esteems marriage as more than just like halal intimacy. That it's not, this is, like one of the things that I'm attempting to do with my son, who is only 6, but it's never too early. It's never too early, is talking to him about everything that we're putting into him in terms of as a growing, developing young man. The real the highest expression of many of those values will be when he has a Muslim family of his own. That will be the highest expression of those values. And it's something that when the time is right, we want to make him desirous of. Like, this is something we want you to be looking forward to. This is something that we want you to esteem and something that we want you to find value in. And I think that as Muslims, as a community, I think we fail to do that in large part. I don't find, most of the young men that I talk to, marriage is something that they're capitulating to due to family pressure. Like, my mom is pressuring me to marry, so I guess it's something that I have to do. But it's not anything that they appear to be independently looking forward to. Like, this is, if I ever wanted to, test my mettle, as it were, if I ever wanted to, show my virtue, to show my patience, to show my understanding, to show my warmth, to show that prophetic tenderness, to show that ease, becoming a woman's husband and the honor that entails is the way to do that. That just hasn't, that kind of culture of marriage has yet to really take off. And I think it's because we come from Muslim cultures, many of us, in which marriage is just a given. Many of our parents probably don't feel the need to talk about marriage in that way, or to encourage marriage in that way, because they come from cultures in which marriage is just a given. It's like, what else do people do when they become adults and they're able to support themselves? Of course they get married. And that, again, is one of those cultural shifts that I see occurring in terms of this first effective settlement. This thing of like marriage in our context is something very intentional. It's something a person has to be intentional about, something they have to be independently motivated to do. Whereas I think a lot of our parents come from cultures in which, familial pressure, communal pressure, cultural expectations do most of the work of getting a young man or a young woman to the altar, that you don't have to really push them. Life is just going to push them. But now we actually need to get out and push our men, especially, helping to grow them in capacity and in focus. And in order to do that, we're going to have to make stronger arguments than avoid the fire of hell. We're going to have to, because I mean that's something that presumably they already know about. We have to, in addition to that argument, just make clear arguments for why marrying a Muslim woman is good and beneficial to you, beneficial to your family, and is a clear indication of your willingness to be with someone that can hold you accountable, someone that her very presence reminds you of the best things that you're supposed to be about. Whereas I've seen that sometimes, you know, you know, and this is across the spectrum in terms of religiosity. I find that Muslim men who are intentional. Now, things that happen. There's no way of preventing life from happening. If someone fell in love with a colleague, or someone fell in love with a classmate, there's really nothing you can do about that. On the other hand, someone that is intentional, like someone that their dating patterns kind of reveal again and again that they do not pursue, do not talk to Muslim women. I think, I've seen really two things. One is just with a Muslim woman, there's usually more complexity around sex. Not to say that, Muslims aren't having sex before marriage, but sometimes even then, there is still the expectation of marriage, meaning like, okay, they'll engage, but there is still the kind of expectation of a singular relationship of some kind that could ultimately culminate in marriage. Whereas, that is not always the expectation inside of our community, not to mention outside of our community. And then the second thing is comfort. If you are struggling with your religious identity, and that struggle is shown both in belief and conduct, being with someone that is at least, even if they're also struggling, but they're at least aware of your struggle. And let me say that again, because I think, if you don't kind of dissect that, some of that can get past you. Someone that, even if they themselves are not so religious, they're aware of their lack of religiousness. They're aware of their lack of religiosity. And if they're Muslim, they're aware of yours as well. So when, for instance, one attempts to get on some moral high horse, there's this sobering reality that, neither one of us are really doing what we're supposed to be doing. So, it's very hard to sometimes be compelling, in that way. Whereas I find with Muslim man and a non-Muslim woman, and I actually attribute this somewhat to Islam, just having I think some very core, essential, fundamental, basic, just Muslim manners. This is someone that I'm saying is not very religious, someone that is clearly dating, maybe even engaging in a sexual relationship outside of marriage, but just with some, just core, essential, kind of fundamental kind of Muslim traits, is liable to stand out among other men of his, of a similar age and position, as being very wholesome, very family oriented, very value based, etc. And so, it's much more self-affirming to be with someone that makes you feel like a great moral success than someone that is very aware of your moral failure. So yeah, it does take courage to, I think, for a Muslim man to seek companionship with a Muslim woman. It takes courage, and unfortunately, we just don't see enough Muslim men pursuing relationships, romantic relationships, marriages, with Muslim women. So yeah, Donna, I definitely see that. Does anybody else have anything on this? This is something that I figured would get people talking.
I have a question from somebody.
Yes.
The question is, what advice might you have for those who are looking to marry interracially or convert while navigating familiar or family expectations around that, specifically if the convert has not changed their name and Muslim parents are uneasy with this, prefer that they change their name, even though it's not required Islamically.
You know, one thing about, and I know I'm gonna sound so idealistic and romantic, but you know, race is such an issue in the United States of America, and ethnicity is such an issue in the Muslim community. The difficulties that one has in making this union happen, an interracial union happen, or interethnic union happen in the US is just like compound difficulty, right? But what I find, and this is something I can speak to, you know, if you guys will allow me, how safe is this space, right? You know, I'm going to be very, very honest. Bismillah. I'm going to read Saif's comment in 1 second, inshallah. I'm going to be very, very honest. 1 second. Let me. In fact, I think I want to see. Oh man, I'm back, Asia. SubhanAllah. I'm me. Wait a second. Let me rename myself. I don't know how my daughter did this. It's my default. Bismillah. And Saif, I'll come to your question or comment in the chat in 1 second. But you know, this is very personal for me. You know, my mother and my father weren't together when I was growing up due to certain issues my father had with substance abuse. And my mother worked so hard. You know, my mother was an educated woman. My mother is a scientist by trade. You know, she's a chemist by trade, and she worked for years as a production chemist. First for Johnson and Johnson, then Bausch and Lomb. Then there was a printing ink company. My mother did lots. You know, she used her background in chemistry in lots of you know, demanding but very interesting ways. But as a family, we could never really get ahead financially because my mother never had. She was always a single mother, and my father was derelict. You know, and that even as a youth, that pained me. It's weird, man, how children know and can sense much more than you think. I was very aware, and I felt like, you know, of course now I'm Muslim and I realize the qadr of Allah, you know, you got to go through it to get to it. But I was very aware as a child of feeling like my mother was cheated. First by my father individually. And then as I became more aware of a culture of dereliction among Black men of that time, some of that due to the excesses and abuses of the criminal justice system, like literally taking fathers out of the home, but not all of it. I realize that is the very popular talking point to talk about the way that systemic inequality ravaged the Black family. Some of that is certainly true, and some personal dereliction is certainly true. It's not all systemic. But I remember feeling that my mother had really been, robbed of what should have been her life in my view of things. I just thought my mother's life should have been much more comfortable. You know, my mother used to work 70-hour weeks and still find a way to be at all of the cheerleading meets for my sister, all of my basketball games, help us with homework, put the TV dinner in, get the Great Start breakfast, the TV breakfast. You know, it's a wonder I'm not a walking hypertension study, as much TV, as much microwave food, as much microwave food as I ate growing up, just because my mother was very, very hardworking. And she did also cook on many nice. So there was this part of me that longed to see Black men, African-American men, stepping up to the plate to care for Black women. Like that was a part of me before I was Muslim. Like that was something that was very important to me. And like if ever I saw, and this is weird, when I saw interracial relationships, even before I was Muslim, there was something about it that made me feel guilty. They made me feel particularly when I saw a Black woman with a non-Black man, there was something about it that made me feel guilty. Like, it made me, it really made me feel guilty. And maybe because of my own guilt or revisitation to pain of my own childhood, I never could feel good about those relationships. Like I would look at interracial relationships and they would just produce different kinds of discomfort, displeasure, and sometimes, like the histrionics, like my face, like this is before I was Muslim, I would, go downtown Chicago, and see like a Black woman with a white man, and I would, right, or see, a Black man with a white woman, and I would feel, well, he could be with a Black woman, and I would feel, right. And I remember, embracing Islam, and this issue was still something that was very real, very visceral, very unresolved within me. And it was only after becoming a Muslim that I met interracial Muslim couples that had so much integrity in their love for each other. Some like people in Chicago, Mike Swice, Ali Bilal, people that I knew personally that had so much integrity in their love for one another that at some point I said to myself, I have my issues, I have my reasons, I have all of that. But if I deny the good that God has apparently placed between these two hearts, something is wrong with me. I'm sick. If I'm saying I'm seeing these two people, I'm seeing what God has placed between them. And if after witnessing that and clearly being able to identify it for what it was, if I still find something wrong, if I don't see it as blessing, if I don't see it as providence, if I don't see it as God's decree to bring two souls together who He has placed love between their hearts, there's something wrong with me. And I think that a lot of people, it will have to be something like that. It will have to be that kind of awakening. It's not, I mentioned all of that to say that a lot of these feelings we have about like these deep feelings about interracial marriages or relationships or interethnic unions, and these are not things that we were rationalized into. And when people sit and they have hadith for us and they have stories for us, the reason those things don't affect us is because we can't be rationalized out of beliefs, views, opinions we were not rationalized into. But when we have experiences that are just as strong, where it's like, yeah, I had some very strong experiences that led me to my discomfort with interracial relationships. But seeing people together, like they didn't even know that I was observing them the way that I was observing them. I would be sitting there like at a party looking like, subhanAllah, she is so right for him. And he is so right for her. If I, due to something that is a personal hang-up, cannot just recognize this for the blessing that it is, man, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. And I think that I just got to a place where I wanted to confront that. And I think a lot of Muslims that have those kinds of views, I think they need to be challenged in that way, not with a long, drawn out, overly verbose kind of argument, but letting them see that this person that I'm considering that may or may not want to change their name, or I really feel like God has placed something between us. And I'm ready to go before the Lord of the worlds and my family and this person's family. And I'm ready to pledge my commitment to what I believe God has placed here for me in terms of my risk, in terms of what is for me, in terms of my destiny, my decree. And it does not matter to me what their ethnic background is. It does not matter to me. Not that it does not matter to me. In fact, maybe I'm intrigued by the color of their skin. Maybe I'm attracted to the color of their skin. So even more than it not mattering to me, it might matter a great deal to me, but it does not repulse me in the way that maybe it repulses you. And being honest and open and prepared to just be real about that, and then putting it, in the other person's court. Now, I've told you how I feel about it. Now, to my parents or to whoever's watching, what do you want to do with that? And I think that's the only way that kind of transformation takes place within individuals. It's like, look, this is something, all of the historical issues, Black and white communities, I'm just speaking about because when one says interracial, to me, I know there's a broad spectrum of what is meant, but in an American context, it means Black and white. And so, the long and very difficult past, between those communities, and oh man, there's a lot there. But when you see two people and it's clear, God's blessing is clear, you have to take those issues, take your awareness of that history to your faith and ask yourself, what you gonna do? And I really had to have like a gut check moment with myself. What you gonna do? Are you really gonna say? I mean, it's just like, in all honesty, it would bring me, I'm sure it would produce no discomfort in my life if any of my children wanted to marry a Black person, a Black Muslim with taqwa, that's emotionally together, driven, career oriented, if they want that. That would produce no consternation for me. I'm sure about that. Asi wants to marry someone, my eldest daughter wants to marry someone that reminds me of myself. So, oh yeah, this is great. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. But I always tell my wife, if she brought home someone that was non-Black, and this person had taqwa, this person was a God-fearing person, and it was clear that God had placed something between them, I would stand in the way of that because of my own personal. A'udhu billah. A'udhu billah. That's not the deen that I practice. That's not the God in whom I believe. So I usually try to talk about this issue to say that feeling of, I guess, a heightened affinity for one's community, and that desire for the continuation and the perpetuation of certain kinds of cultural norms even. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I think some of that is just natural to anyone that has a strong cultural identity and a sense of who they are. But you always have outliers. You have people that are no less proud of being Pakistani, but they have fallen in love with someone Arab. What are you going to do? You have people that are no less proud of being Arab, but they have fallen in love with someone West African. Well, what are you gonna do about that? And I just think that, my perspective, you have people that I know that's proud to be Black, but they've fallen in love with someone white. What are you gonna do about that? There's a famous story that Maya Angelou, the famous, literature and writer, poet, she was about to marry a white man. And she was uncomfortable with how she would be perceived, being kind of being in the vanguard of the Black arts movement, and marrying a white person probably wouldn't be something that anybody saw coming. You know what I'm saying? Probably wouldn't be something that anyone saw coming. And so she was talking to James Baldwin, and she said, I'm thinking about marriage, but he's white. And James Baldwin said something that I think is profound. His being white didn't prevent you from falling in love with him. So why would it prevent you from marrying him? His being white didn't prevent you from falling in love with him. So why would it prevent you from marrying him? I mean, these are difficult conversations, but I know where I am on these issues. Now, I myself have no less affinity for Black love, myself, Black women, but Allah's fadl, Allah's favor is bigger than me. Allah's blessing does not have to confirm my presuppositions and things that make me comfortable. He's God, and he can do whatever he wants. And he can place love and mercy between whatever hearts he wants. And he can bring people together however he wants. And so, you just have to stand firm in your truth and just let people deal with it. But when they deal with it, let them see your integrity in it. Let them see your integrity in it. And in my experience, that integrity can change minds and change hearts. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
There's just a little follow-up. What advice do you give on the fact that the parents would want them to change their name and they are not wanting to change their name when they're a convert?
Well, I mean, it depends on, you want a real answer, or you want a fake answer. If you want a real answer, the real answer is, when it comes to, trying to, marry a family, individuals don't marry, families marry. We have to be prepared to lean and give a little, right? So what I would say, if this person were a friend of mine, I would tell him, her, hey, look, just let them call you something different. No, look, maybe you never use the name Ali anywhere. But when you go to your in-laws' house, nice to meet you. I'm Ali. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you'll never, ever call yourself Muhammad. And that's what I would say. Look, they want a name. We're going all the way. We're pulling at the heartstrings. You go deny somebody named Muhammad? My name is Muhammad. So what's up? Right? So, it's like, look, practically, they want someone with a Muslim, quote unquote, name. We give it to them. We know that that's not necessary. It's not necessary to change your name when you convert to Islam. We know that this is kind of a strange expectation, but I think a willingness to comply with something like that is a strong indication of this person's readiness to compromise, to really be in community with his in-laws or her in-laws. So I would say, that's what they want, man. Just give it to them. Now, because look, it's not, yes, you do marry a family, but the primary relationship is between you and the person you're marrying. And, you have interactions and engagements with your in-laws from time to time. It's not, it shouldn't become a bone of contention in the marriage, right? It's, from time to time. So, all of us married folks on the call probably can reference a few, performance pieces that we've engaged in, for our in-laws, and if your wife is worth it or your husband is worth it, like I truly believe mine is, you engage in the performance happily, man. This is what I have to do. This is. We're doing a little make believe here. Alhamdulillah, it's no problem. Mashallah. You guys think we should just break and just pray Maghrib, or you guys want to pray Maghrib at the conclusion of class? Randa, what do you think? You're the Amira. Randa, you're running. This is all. You are the Amira. Yeah. So should we just pray at 7, or should we just break now and then pray and come back? What Randa, is your call completely.
What do you think about ending class maybe like 6:45?
Yeah. Okay. Bismillah. That's fine.
I would defer to you versus me.
No, mashallah. No, alhamdulillah. No, I'm very comfortable deferring to your decision. So if you want to do that, that's the way we'll do it, inshallah. Does anybody else have anything on either of these topics, which I think are really hot button topics?
Well, I think Saif had a question, and then I had somebody else who sent me a series of questions, which I don't know if we'll get to, but.
Okay, maybe I'll look at Saif's question in the chat. Bismillah.
You want me to?
Ismail he's a master of puns. He's a master of puns, mashallah. He's a master of puns.
It's a blessing and a curse. But thank you. Assalamu
alaikum. Alhamdulillah. One of the toughest things about the process in the US is that there isn't a clear definition at all about how to go about these things in a halal way. I'm certainly not demanding a fatwa, but I am interested in your thoughts about how a halal courting process would go. Oh my God, Saif, man, we are in the wilderness, man, and we don't have any real functional norms. I would say this is what I expect. Now, don't get me in any trouble, but I actually expect, my expectation. And again, I realize that there are some cultural differences and some things like that, to each his own. But what I expect now, and mashallah, I've done hundreds, believe it or not, maybe 100 Muslim weddings. Mashallah, on this call, you probably have people that, mashallah, I was the officiant at their weddings. I've done quite a few of them, and I enjoy all of them, mashallah. Some more than others, but I enjoy them. And whenever I'm talking to the couple and I ask them about how they met, I would say maybe only 10% of the time was their meeting arranged by their parents. That just tends to be less common nowadays. People are meeting each other in a variety of ways, sometimes in passing, sometimes at work, sometimes at school, sometimes through mutual friends, sometimes on different, marriage apps sometimes, but people tend to be finding their way to each other independent of parental influence. What I think should happen then is once, of course, there is going to be, and this is for me, like legal realism. In terms of there being an initial interest, I think that is going to be judged, that is going to be assessed upon the encounter, whether it's via the app, whether it's at work, whether it's at school, whether it's on the street, whether it's walking the lakefront trail, whether it's at the shopping mall. There's going to be an initial interest of some kind. If that initial interest proves more than just a passing infatuation. You saw someone and thought they were attractive and kept walking. But there is some kind of introduction that takes place, and either party, and especially both, think that there's something here, right? Of course, there's going to be some engagement, right? Shouldn't be too much, but there's going to be some engagement. That there's enough engagement to know this is someone that I am interested in, or someone that didn't ever have a chance, right? As soon as some interest is detected, both ways, I think parents should be involved. And I know that sounds kind of like old school, but this is really for the protection of our souls, for the protection of our hearts, of our emotions. One of the biggest lies, man, and I know it sounds kind of uncool, but I'll tell you the truth because I'm your brother. One of the biggest lies about hookup culture is that it makes sex and relationships much less consequential in terms of their impact on us than they actually are. Even if a person says with their mouth, I am still not convinced in these kind of no strings attached relationships. Now, relationships are, subhanAllah. There was a woman, and I've talked about her in some classes in the past, that used to alter my clothes. We never, I saw her, she just altered my clothes. I would bring, as my weight went up, down, my weight doesn't fluctuate a lot, but different every season, different items that I wanted to, have altered or whatever. And her name was Rosie. And it was right there on Adams Estate. And she died, detected like stage 4 cancer and passed away very quickly afterward. And I came in to have my alterations done. And the knowledge that Rosie had died really hit me hard. And Rosie and I had never sat down, never had a face-to-face conversation other than in the shop, never went to dinner, never anything. So the idea that you could have the most intimate personal relationship with somebody and that not affect you that's a shaitanic lie. That's not true, actually. So once you recognize the level of gravity with which relationships must be treated, sexual and non-sexual, whether they're sexual relationships, that's the highest level, but even just emotional relationships, we make deep emotional investments in each other. Involving parents, hopefully, is not a way of stifling the process. It's not a way of messing things up. It's just a way of involving all of the relevant players, right? Because if we're going to take this to a halal end, at some point, parents are going to be involved. If parents are involved sooner, the parents feel very good about the person they're being introduced to. The parents also feel good about their place in the lives of their children. See, if my daughter introduces me to somebody early on in the process, I'm feeling not only good about the process, I'm also feeling good about the relationship I have with my daughter. Therefore, I'm feeling much better about her judgment. Okay, you involved me early. If you're even though I'm having a difficult time reading the situation, if you're telling me based on what you've been saying, based on the conversations you've been having with this person, this is right, this is right, this is right, this is right. If you involved me early, I'm much more inclined to defer to you. Okay, you clearly are a person thinking reasonably about this. Right. But if you involve me late, this is man or woman. My eldest child is a daughter. But if you involve me late, I'm much more likely to think, oh man, you're young, impressionable. You're clearly caught in the torrent of some very strong emotion, And that emotion has clouded your judgment. And so I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, okay, you don't have any idea about what's good for you. You're infatuated with this person, and that's that. Then I think the parents become much more critical. They become much more doubtful about what's taking place. When they are involved from the very beginning, I think everything is more secure, more confident. And then I think, safe to your point, the parents can, give some, I think the parents should. I don't know how everyone's parents are, right? That's the difficult part about this reality. But the parents should give very practical steps about how two people can actually come to know one another. What are the, should we chaperone meetings? Is it okay if we go out with no chaperones, but in an open space during the day? Should we talk on the phone with other people in the room? Is it, there are many ways, and I think in our context, we have to be creative. But I think parental involvement and then active parental engagement, where parents aren't these roadblocks. See, a lot of this is not even about the young people, it's about the parents. The parents have overwrought expectations of their children. I mean, they just really don't have a clue of what's going on out here. So a lot of the parents are, well, you're going to finish med school, you're going to do your residency, and then it's like, if you only knew, if you only knew. By that time, the person might not even have an interest in marriage because they've had so many other kinds of relationships that all have left their deposits, or perhaps made their withdrawals, from that person, their spirit, their soul, their heart. So when the parents wake up and see that, okay, we, an American 20-something comes to you, tells you they're interested in marriage, and you're not actively strategizing with them about how to facilitate, you're deluded. You're lost. You're lost. Now, some of that facilitation might involve delay. Like, okay, look, I'm with you. Okay, let's see how we can at least get through, med school, and then, or let's see if we can at least get through the first 2 years of law school, or let's see if we can at least finish your undergrad. Then we can do it. Then maybe you guys can, whatever the strategy is. What parents have to know is that the shutdown, that is the worst of all possible responses. The shutdown, like, no, there's nothing to talk about here. Oh, how foolish. That is like, it's incalculably unwise. Like, it's so foolish. Like, the person is involving you. You're shutting them down. When I quote to you the statistic that now they say 2 out of 3, I was just listening to a researcher, Shakira Abdullah from Widener University in Delaware. 2 out of 3 young Muslims under the age of 40, are having sex outside of marriage. Those parents that do the shutdown, they have to see themselves as contributing to those statistics. They have to see themselves as making a contribution to those statistics. So, other than involve parents early, and then parents putting together, some kind of strategy to take us to the goal line, meaning in terms of time, how, methods, we have to be creative. But we do want to employ a strategy here to take these 2 virtuous young people, if they're involving their parents, to the goal line. How will we get them there? And that can involve different kinds of support, both material and emotional, guidance, etc. How do we, okay, you 2 young people who want to get married, lillah. As a community, how can we all pitch in to get you to the goal line? That's where we need to go, Saint. That's where we need to go. And we have to create a culture in which young people feel confident that when you come to your respected elders in the community, that is their interest. How can we get this brother and this, how can we get them where they want to go? Right. And we want to get them there in a situation where they, they're prepared to succeed, not fail. We don't want to put them with each other with their, they have no means of supporting themselves or a child. Emotionally, they're not together. Spiritually, they're not together. Neither of them know anything about what a serious romantic partnership entails. No. So with counseling, with advice, with help, with facilitating their ability to get to know each other, how can we collectively help get them across the finish line? That's where I think we have to go. That's what I think. Other things. We have about 5 minutes left, inshallah.
Yeah, so somebody sent me a series of questions to ask. Let me see.
Oh, okay.
Pick one that maybe has a shorter answer. I don't know if this is a short answer or not, but how long should somebody talk to somebody before getting married?
There's no, when you know, I think the longer you wait, the easier it becomes to dissuade yourself against getting married. I mean, that's just, marriage is just, until you actually do it, you're always going to be taking a leap of faith. I don't care. You could talk to someone for 3 years. Until you have lived with that person, and now don't go live with them, though. Don't go do that. But until you have actually lived with that person and seen them deal with the various stressors, sometimes, subhanAllah, it's not, sometimes, even when we think about getting to know people, we think, well, you don't know how they deal with, tension, stress, anxiety, those things. Sometimes it's the exact opposite. You don't know how this person will deal with great success. Like maybe you met them and they were very modest, very humble, and then he sells his company. Like this startup that he was working on sells for 100 million. And you're like, who is this egotistical monster? What happened to the sweet, unassuming man that I met? Now he refers to himself in the third person. And whenever he sits down, he puts the arm of his glasses in his mouth and just starts pontificating. And I find the whole thing disgusting. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen in your life with this person. There's just no way of knowing that. So you're always going to be taking a leap of faith. I think the longer you wait, the easier it is to convince yourself not to do it. Right. So, there's no kind of one size fits all answer, but I will say when you have gathered enough confidence to commit, that is when the time is right to commit. For some people that takes a year, for some people that takes 3 months, for some people that takes 6 months. But once you have gathered, once you've gathered enough information that, with, and also too, and this is why, I know, I understand why women as strong and accomplished as a lot of the women in our community are. Mashallah, we have just women doing phenomenal things. I get why they would think this imposition of a wali is just superfluous. Like, who needs? I am an accountant, or I am, an executive with so-and-so firm, or I am a pediatrician. Clearly I know how to manage my life. I don't need some male relative helping me. But this is, you're wading into water that you've never entered before. Even if you've had other relationships, when you're talking about marriage. And I think to have another voice, and in this case, a male voice, that you can bounce your concerns off of, and you can talk to about your level of readiness, your level of confidence, and having that person talk to you about things that perhaps you're overlooking. Maybe have you considered this? Have you thought about this? Have you, right? And once you and that person, I think for women, arrive at a consensus that, you're ready, this is promising enough to take the leap, then you should take the leap. And men, we actually need the same thing. We actually need the same thing. We actually need guidance. I think it's been mandated in the case of women in 3 out of the 4 madahib, because I think childbirth, women need extra protection because women have extra investment in their relationships. Women, just because of the potential of childbirth, women come to the relationship standing to be impacted much more greatly than men. If somebody wants to argue me on that, some brother wants to argue me on that, that's fine. But that's something that to me is indisputable. The impact on, say, a bad relationship, a bad pairing, the impact to a woman is much greater. So the Sharia has mandated that women have this guarantor, this counselor, this counsel rather, right, to kind of help them with that process. Men don't have a legal protection that this is kind of a mandatory thing, but men certainly should have the involvement of their mothers, their sisters, their fathers, their brothers, religious leaders, people in the community, that are also helping them to determine when they have gathered enough information to determine that this situation is promising. And again, there's no set amount of time, but it should not be done individually. It should be done, in concert with other people that are also looking out for your best interests. Friends too, right. Don't go alone. Go with someone else, inshallah. So maybe so that we can make Maghrib, and it's not Maghrib in flagrante. Inshallah, we can jump off now, inshallah, and we'll figure out what we'll do about the Salat timings, as of course time is going back. And oh no, it'll already be we after November 1st, we will have been finished with Maghrib by the time we get on the call, so it won't be an issue at all. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين.